is the Orange Zone, sponsored by Apex Entertainment.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into another edition of the Orange Zone podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston, and we have a full slate for you today for Syracuse sports and beyond. We're going to be getting into a little bit of basketball. Syracuse got a new center. The Georgetown rivalry is on hold for Syracuse men's basketball. Plus, Cornell bringing home their first national title in men's lacrosse since 1977. Thanks so much for joining us. Hello, Ashley. Ashley's been off. She's been enjoying the high life these past few days. What's been going on?
I've been gallivanting, frolicking thousands of miles away.
In like the Midwest or something? You're like a Midwest girl now?
Yeah, I'm a Midwest girl now. No, just kidding. Saw the great state of Wisconsin. It was my first time there. Great lakes you all have up there. You know, if anybody's ever been to Wisconsin, great time.
I'm envisioning you coming back with like a souvenir. You're like, the great state.
I had a Chicago Bears sweatshirt on. I'm like, hey guys. I'm just like from New Jersey.
Sure.
Everybody's like, who is this newest transplant out here? Anyways, all that to say, yes, lovely Memorial Day weekend. Happy to be back. Missed quite a bit. I was watching the lacrosse from afar because I was just that into the lacrosse this season for both Syracuse and Cornell that had to keep an eye on it. One of those teams had a good result and the other didn't, and we'll get into that in a little bit.
I just have to say this to get it out there. You know, you might have been gallivanting around in the Midwest, but you can't take the New Jersey out of the girl, especially when it comes to you. Come on, man. You're an East Coast girl through and through.
Wisconsin is like a little bit of a sight. I can't lie. Like the lady at the Quick Trip, first of all, discovered what a Quick Trip was. Like the grocery store is the gas station. I was like, why are we selling apples in the gas station? She's like, oh, sweetie, how are ya?
Yep.
And I'm like,
it's a little polarizing,
It's a lot.
those two things together.
I just wanted a nice coffee, but
Great,
you know, it's all right.
great. Apples in the gas station. Nothing wrong with that.
Apples in the gas station.
Sure,
Yeah.
why not?
Yeah.
Anything in the Midwest, anything goes. Anyway, we're going to start off by talking about Syracuse men's basketball in Georgetown. Came out today, courtesy of John Rothstein, that Syracuse won't face its longtime foe in the upcoming men's basketball season, Georgetown. This is a rivalry that many Syracuse fans know has gone on for quite a bit of time. And it's going to be really weird having Georgetown not be a part of it. It's really like a decades-long rivalry. The two teams played each other twice, sometimes three times a year as Big East rivals from 1980 to 2013. It was paused for 2 years after Syracuse left the Big East to join the ACC, and then Georgetown returned to Syracuse's schedule in the 2015-16 season. We also know that both coaches, after the game this past season, said that they would love if they could continue this rivalry and play each other every year. And now that might not happen. Well, it won't happen.
Yeah, you sort of felt this one coming, or at least I did. After that game last year with Autry and Ed Cooley really got on the mic after that game last year. Georgetown beat them in the Dome and said, I would love to continue this rivalry and I would love to play every year. But to me, I sort of felt it coming. It just hasn't had the juice that it had in years past. I mean, my parents went to Syracuse. I grew up a Syracuse fan before I went there and then worked here. And I remember how big of a deal that game was, even in, you know, the 2010s, the, like old Big East time, of course, but even a little bit after that Big East time. And it just has sort of lost its luster. So I'm not shocked. But at the same time, it is a shame, right? Like Syracuse, we've touched on this a million times, does not have really a traditional rival within the ACC. Yes, the Duke game's a big deal. The North Carolina game's a big deal. But whether you like it or not, those are both sort of one-sided rivalries because Syracuse usually does not come out on top of those games. So non-conference-wise, and especially within the area, Georgetown was still really one of those last traditional real rivals, right? Like we've talked about a lot. Like I think putting a game with St. John's on the schedule would be fun. Why not?
Absolutely. And I know that there are a host of fans who think that's a bad idea because they think that Syracuse would get killed by St. John's. You guys have to know at this point, if you're a fan, that things change every single year with NIL and whatnot. I am sure that St. John's will be a better basketball team than Syracuse. But so what? Like, honestly, I don't like that mentality where it's like, well, just because they're a good team, we shouldn't put that on the non-conference schedule. Like, come on, man. Like, grow up. I think that you need to face, that is what championship level teams do, is they face tough teams in the non-conference schedule, so they're ready for the conference schedule.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's all good. And I totally agree. I think you have to start thinking, if you're one of the decision makers and you're in charge of Syracuse's schedule, what games are going to be tantalizing, for lack of a better word. What's going to excite people?
Because, right, like I just said, Syracuse Georgetown lost its luster. It was almost a prime example of like two programs on the wrong side of the hill for right now, which with NIL and everything, right? Like Georgetown and Syracuse, both two premier basketball programs in the days of the Big East that have sort of fallen off in the last 10 to 20 years. So it was almost a sad thing last year. It was almost like the air is just out of the balloon in terms of what it used to be. But at the same time, I am an advocate for Syracuse having a rivalry game, which now on their schedule, they just do not. You can argue Pitt, you can argue Boston College. I guess those to me have just never felt as competitive as some of these other billings. So it's sort of a shame. I know it's only for next year, obviously. Who knows? Maybe they'll bring it back in 2026. But I don't know. I think it's a big case study in terms of both basketball programs. If they can get back to even a semblance of what they used to be, it could be fun again.
Boston College as the rivalry feels like a want to me. I'm not interested in that. And listen, a part of it is I think that rivalry was what it was because you had such stars, throughout that time period. Patrick Ewing, Pearl Washington, Allen Iverson, Derek Coleman, all names that were featured as a part of this rivalry over time. You don't necessarily have that now. Let's face it. We don't have, especially last season, really, those stars, those really memorable players who are going to leave a lasting legacy at Syracuse. But hey, next season, I really think has the potential to be different because, of course, with the names coming in with the freshmen you're going to be seeing out there, Anthony in particular, maybe that's the kind of thing that you need to get the juice back in this rivalry.
Yeah.
Is some bigger star power names.
I completely agree. And it's also worth noting that, so this came out today, Syracuse's full non-conference schedule is expected to be released soon. But the ACC also, for next season, decided to decrease the conference schedule by 2 games, meaning Syracuse has 2 more non-conference games on the schedule than they did in the last few years. So now there is 18 ACC games instead of 20, meaning SU will play 13 non-conference games. So now you're playing 13 non-conference games. One of them is not Georgetown, as opposed to the last few years when it was 11. To me, it's I don't know who killed it between Syracuse or Georgetown. I don't know who was the one to be maybe we don't do it next year.
Is
but
it
if
money?
you're Syracuse, what, you're throwing at me U Albany and no offense to anybody involved, but U Albany and, Cornell and those don't excite me. And now I don't even get Georgetown. No offense. But they don't have the juice, right? You have 2 extra, my point is, you have 2 extra non-conference games and now you don't even have Georgetown. It seemed like there was certainly room for Georgetown.
I genuinely don't know the answer to this question, but genuinely, is it a money thing? Why does a decision like this actually get made? I'm not sure. So if anybody in the comments truly knows the answer to that question, I would like to know. I'd like to know why they got taken off the schedule because of all the things that you were going to switch up or change, and certainly there were a lot of things that could use a little bit of variety, use a little bit of a change in the Syracuse men's basketball program, but that, of all things, it's that's one of the one things that people really liked and really looked forward to. And I know that Rachel Culver is not available right now, but I wish she was. I might text her and just see, because I'm sure she has thoughts as somebody who was with this program or who followed this program her entire life. Those are the kinds of memorable moments that I think if you're one of the longtime fans, a season ticket holder for a long time, those are the kinds of matchups you want to see.
Yeah.
Shouldn't that matter?
Yeah, it should.
I think so.
You'd think.
Anyway, evidently it didn't matter enough. That's the situation. But please let us know. Drop it in the comments. What do you think? Why do you think this happened? And how do you feel about it? Moving on, speaking of Syracuse men's basketball, wanted to note this as well. They just got a new center. His name is TIEFING DIAWARA. He is a West Africa native. He is 6'11", 240 pounds. Isn't that just a football number? Can we just stop there?
Large guy.
I mean, that's a big dude in high school.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, man, I'm looking at some of his huddle film, and from time to time this happens where you're looking at someone's huddle film, and for the first few seconds you're like, oh, I wonder which one he is. And then you're like, oh, he's that guy.
Right. I found him.
Found him towering so far above all of these other 17 and 18-year-old kids. He looks like a man amongst boys out there.
I know.
I mean, he's dunking like it is the easiest thing he's ever done. He is blocking the basketball without even jumping. It was embarrassing the way that he was treating some of these other players.
Yeah.
And again, I did actually just want to put this out there. I spoke to a national analyst for 24/7 Sports yesterday who covers high school recruits and commits across the country. He said that he doesn't anticipate that Cheffy is going to be someone who starts right away. He will be somebody who logs a couple minutes here and there, but he can serve as a utility guy. And the most important thing, in my opinion, that he pointed out is, yes, of course, his size is a big part of the reason why Syracuse recruited him. But he said he's also good on his feet, too. This is an athletic guy. And I know that you'll appreciate this, Ashley, because we did talk about centers, last year, too. Compared to a guy like, let's say, Naheem McLeod, who at many times just looked lost out there, wasn't the most athletic guy, I think that kind of situation makes you realize that size is important in basketball for sure, but it's not everything. It's an asset to have a really huge dude who can also move around.
Yeah, and Eddie Lampkin, right? Lampkin was athletic enough last year, but there were certainly some questions at times about his mobility and other things like that. So, center was a position that Syracuse really was lacking sort of depth and size, so this seems to fit both of those billings. Sort of remarkable, like we're talking about Cheffy's size here, that he is even out of high school, that he is a class of 2025 recruit. He spent time in Europe the past few years, Italy and Spain. He's a native of Mali, like you said, but he actually went to high school at an academy in, ironically enough, Wisconsin.
I know. Delafield, Wisconsin, baby.
Shout out to Wisconsin. This episode sponsored by Wisconsin. Just kidding. This episode sponsored by Apex Entertainment. Anyways, yeah, I think it's good to see them get some size and depth. Like I said, he shot 80% from the free throw line in high school, which is sort of interesting for a center. And Baylor and Kansas State were also involved with his recruitment, so those are two good programs as well. So yeah, like you said, I don't expect to see a ton of him in his first year as a freshman, but I definitely think coming off the bench to give them some depth at the center position is definitely helpful. And with his size, if he can prove that he has that athleticism and that mobility, he really could be a major asset to Syracuse, maybe in his sophomore season.
Interesting that you brought up the free throw point, because I will say Dale Ostrander, one of our news anchors here at the station, asked me that exact question yesterday. He was truly curious about it.
Free throws matter.
Free throws matter, as Brent Axe would say. Shout out Brent Axe, Syracuse.com. That being said, the other question I brought up to this analyst was, if he is about to graduate, why was he even still available? You would think that a guy, even if he could barely shoot the ball, if he's 6'11", 240, why doesn't anyone already have him?
Quite late in the recruitment cycle.
And a part of it, he said, is that when international students are coming over to the United States, that can be a part of the delay. And I'm just going to say it right now as a prediction that we probably will not know whether or not it comes true until both of us have flown away into the sun and away from 1030 James Street.
Blast off.
But I'm still going to say it. Cheffy, to me, seems like one of those people that a few years from now is that sleeper pick, that sleeper guy who all of a sudden is making a gigantic impact. Because I really think he might have been somebody who would have had more opportunities and gotten recruited earlier were he to have been from the United States. But because he wasn't, that process is a little bit delayed. All of a sudden, there aren't as many offers, and Syracuse maybe ends up with this diamond. The question will become, and I asked this to the analyst yesterday, let's say they develop this guy, Cheffy. He's great. He lives up to every expectation. And by his junior season, he's ready to go. He's going to get huge minutes. Who's to say that he's not going to fly off to an SEC school?
Well, yeah, that's the world now. Who's to say that somebody isn't going to drop a bag on him? To me, I mean, obviously, this is the obvious point here. It would seem as though Syracuse, in fact, did not have to drop a bag on him out of high school because, like you said, sort of flew under the radar late in the recruitment cycle, international student, the whole 9 yards. We don't know any of those details right now, but I would be surprised if that were the case. Cheffy certainly could play his way into quite a bit of money if he has the athleticism and the talent to match up with his size.
And when I did ask that to the analyst yesterday, he's like, well, Samantha, that's the question everyone's asking across America right now.
That's the $1 million question.
But it really is. And that, like, honestly, that is where, and I know we've had this conversation before, but it's worth one mention. This is where relationships become crucial. Listen, I get it. I know that there's a camp of people out there who just want to say that money is the most important thing. It's the same people who said that Juan Soto came to the Mets for a couple extra million. I know that you all exist. I just don't think that you're a ball knower. You're a certified ball knower if that's all you're thinking matters to some of these kids. They want other things besides money. They want to be coached. They want to be taught. They want to have a life outside of their sport. They want to know about financial literacy. They want to set up themselves and, in some cases, their own families.
Yeah.
There's more to this than people think. The relationships matter. I hope that Adrian Autry and his staff have a plan for that moving forward.
Yeah, and the relationships matter in terms of who who originally recruited you, right? Now he's always going to have that Syracuse was the first one to go out and get him from his academy that he played at in Wisconsin, right? That is going to matter to him, that loyalty aspect. I know we always have Lawrence Moten on in basketball season, and he loves the word loyalty. That is
just going to say that.
Biggest thing is loyalty. There's no more loyalty anymore.
I was just going to say that.
No more loyalty in the Lawrence Moten boys. But it does matter to some of these kids, especially a guy who, like you said, this is going to be a transitional year, his first year in college in the U.S., the whole 9 yards. So hopefully Adrian Autry and his staff do know that and do know that they have a really special chance to keep him around because they were the first ones to build that relationship with him.
I think that's well said. I understand where Moten is coming from, and he's really old school, and all of you who listen to this podcast know that. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe when you can. But don't tell me that loyalty doesn't matter to anybody our own age anymore.
I can less, but it still matters.
It matters less. I totally agree that when you're talking about Gen Z, you're living in a world where a lot of people our age are going to put themselves first before their companies, perhaps, or teams, whatever. And that's not, I'll be honest, necessarily a bad thing. I get why it's like that. It is a business after all now. That being said, I actually do think loyalty matters, and I do think relationships and connections that are built matter to some of these players. So whether or not that is true remains to be seen, but a couple years from now, if it is true, I'm coming back around and saying that we talked about this now.
Resurfacing the clip.
That's right. Beyond that, we wanted to hit on lacrosse a little bit. Cornell men's lacrosse, they did the damn thing. They were the number 1 seed. They were the favorite, and sometimes the favorite freaking wins.
Listen to me. I know this is not a unique take. All right, they were the 1 seed. They were the best team in the country all year long. But I had a vision for Cornell men's lacrosse in about March or April. Like I was saying to people this weekend when we were sort of watching this all go down, if I was a betting woman on sports betting, which I'm not, and I sort of find it, this is a sidebar, but I find it outrageous that we actually with our jobs are allowed, well, you're not allowed to sports bet in New York on college sports. So anyway, but I think it's outrageous that we are, like, you're not banned from sports betting as a sports reporter because you do know inside information. So that to me seems like it should be illegal. Anyways, all that to say is I'm not a sports betting woman, okay?
And stop bringing that. Don't bring that around here to this podcast.
But if I was, I would have bet on Cornell months ago because they just had the feeling around Ithaca all year long. You just felt it. They were too good of a team with too good of talent and too good of, like, it just felt like it was really their year. And it was. CJ Kirst is pretty much undoubtedly going to win the Diawara later this week. He was fantastic. He was fantastic in the championship game. I think it was 6 goals.
1 assist.
1 assist. So he was just phenomenal, and Cornell got it done. And I'm not going to lie, we'll talk about Syracuse in a minute, but when Syracuse got pretty much blown out of the water, smoked by Maryland, I was feeling a little worried about Cornell headed into that championship game. You have to give flowers to Maryland and what their head coach has been able to do. They've played on championship weekend, I believe it's 4 or 5 consecutive years. They've only had 1 national title to prove it, but when they were facing Maryland, I was feeling a little worried in conclusion, and Cornell just absolutely got it done. Connor Busic, the head coach of Cornell men's lacrosse, he's been the head coach for only 4 full seasons. He's 31 years old, a former player at Cornell. He is only 31. In those 4 years, he has gone 52-15, now has brought home a national title, 2 championship weekend appearances, 3 NCAA tournament appearances, an Ivy League title, and he's 11-6 versus the Big Ten ACC. He's been dominant in Ithaca.
31. No one expect that I'll be accomplishing that much 4 years from now. Thank you. No, honestly, it is unbelievable. I saw the other day that at 31 years old, he actually became the 2nd youngest coach ever to win a national title, which makes sense. Totally a young gun. But he has a really mature way about him. You could tell how much this meant to him. The entire story, you couldn't have written it any better. And to your point, yes, Cornell wins this game against Maryland by a couple of goals, but it was absolutely nerve-wracking because, a couple days prior, you see Syracuse get beat by Maryland 14-8. And I have to tell you, someone tweeted something about this. I wish I knew the name because I'd credit them, but they said something like, you may not like it. It might not be interesting to watch, but Maryland plays true, logistically sound, structurally sound lacrosse. They play good defense. Yeah. They communicate. They have a good offense. They know how to move the ball around, and their goalie is a brick wall. Yeah. There's nothing creative about it. There's no Syracuse Riz about it. It's not a team that reeks of charisma, if that makes sense. It truly is a team that their foundation is just the basics.
Yeah.
Like they just do the basics really, really well. And I think that if you have an appreciation, a deep appreciation for the sport, you love what it is that Maryland's able to do, because it's not some crafty show, but it is a show nonetheless. I mean, their goalie, Logan McNaney, was so disgusting in this semifinal game, so unreal that, to your point, I was absolutely nervous. I knew that Cornell was the real deal by this point. Who didn't? But especially after they win by 1 goal to Richmond, I'm like, Maryland could blow them out. Like it could genuinely be that kind of game. And it wasn't. And you know what? Credit to CJ Kirst, I will say, because in that semifinal game, he didn't score a single point.
For the first time in his whole career, goose egg, 0.
First time in his career, 0 goals, 0 assists. As Anish Shroff referred to it, double bagels. Obsessed with that phrase.
Oh my.
Using that from now on.
Very Long
Double
Island.
bagels. Very Long Island. Awesome. But then to do that and then come out in the championship game and score 6 goals and 1 assist, like great players need to show up in great players need to show up in big moments. I think that's what differentiates good players from great.
Yeah.
And he did that, you know? He really did that.
Yeah, like you were saying, Maryland just plays clinical, no-nonsense lacrosse. You have to beat Maryland. They are not going to beat themselves at all, not even once per year. Maryland is not going to beat themselves in a game. You have to go out there and you have to take it to Maryland, which is what Cornell did. CJ Kirst, too competitive of a player, too good of a player. I mean, and just the best guy. Like, interviewing him this year and last year down at Cornell, the Kirst family is obviously so legendary in terms of the sport of lacrosse. Multiple of his brothers play in the PLL. He is now going to go on to play in the PLL because he was the #1 overall pick in this year's draft. They are the first family of lacrosse right now, the Kirst family. So to see CJ Kirst explode, you knew it was only a matter of time, right? Like you knew in that championship game, CJ Kirst was not going to be silenced no matter what. No way, no how. And honestly, beyond CJ Kirst, there's a few really excellent storylines in this Maryland game. So first of all, or in this Cornell-Maryland game, I should say. Ryan Goldstein, the sophomore, is insane. I do not have the stats right now, but game in and game out this year, he was putting up 6 points, 4 goals, 2 assists every single game. He is only a sophomore, and I think there could be a Tewaaraton in his very near future as a junior or senior. So he's one part of it. Michael Long is the other part of it that was part of that 3-headed duo for Cornell. He was a high school teammate of CJ's Kirst, and I saw a really, really heartwarming video of the two of them hugging after they won the national title. I mean, how about that? Your high school teammate, you play high school lacrosse with him, you both go to Cornell, and you bring them their first national championship in 48 years. That's amazing. And then the third thing that I wanted to bring up that I noticed when I was watching the game on TV, which is a storyline that really wasn't explored very much this year, was, did you see them continue to flash to the number 21 on the hats?
I did.
I just want to like briefly touch on that
Please
story
do.
because it's actually amazing. So, I believe it's George Bayardi. I may be saying that incorrectly, but I believe it's George Bayardi. Was a player on Cornell men's lacrosse, and he unfortunately died 21 years ago during a game, essentially. And he wore number 21. And so all year long, they had been honoring him, and not even just this year, but they always honor him with the number 21 on a lot of their equipment and whatnot. And so Cornell had to beat Penn State in the semifinals, and they were coached by Jeff Tambroni, who coached George Bayardi at Cornell and is the one who created, they call it the hard hat tradition with the 21 on it. And then Cornell had to beat Maryland, obviously, to win the national championship, and they're coached by John Tillman, who played for Coach Richie Moran, who played lacrosse at Maryland. So all that to say is 21 years ago that's the anniversary of his death, and they win it 21 years. His number was 21, the whole 9 yards. There is just something there that feels really special.
That hard hat, by the way, they take it to every game, comes on every trip. It really, really was a special moment. And sometimes, again, this is where I say some things, like this is why I believe in just the power of the universe. Some things are just meant to be sometimes.
Bigger
and to
than
hear
sports.
it really is. And to hear a story like that, to know that there are some people looking down upon this and feeling proud about it, it matters more. And there's another one, actually, that I'd like to throw into that conversation, too. CJ Kirst's dad, Kyle, actually had a heart attack 10 years ago and died.
Oh my God.
And that's why, and you saw when they're showing, the crowd shots of CJ Kirst's family, it's all of his brothers there and his mom.
Yeah.
And wanted to just give him credit and a little bit of a nod too. Just knowing the kinds of things that he's been through at such a young age, to have the support of his brothers there, to have the support of his mom there, and to know that his dad is looking down and seeing everything that he accomplished. It just makes it even more special, and it makes you feel just even more just that sense of pride towards Cornell, everything that they were able to do, and CJ Kirst being able to have this as ultimately his send-off as he just graduated, a couple days ago, and gets to go on. And the cool thing about it is, now these seniors get to go on and achieve greatness in other aspects of their life too. Like they're really just getting started. Yeah, the
Kirst family, they're the best kids, so polite, so courteous. I went to school with Cole, his brother, Cole Kirst, who now plays in the PLL. So knew him, and I actually met their mom at one of the games this year, and just the best family. So truly couldn't have happened to better people. Like you said, CJ Kirst, this really cements his legacy. He has the all-time goals record for NCAA men's lacrosse. Now he brought home a national title. It really does truly put him in that conversation of one of the best to ever play college men's lacrosse. Let us know in the comments your thoughts on that. Where does CJ Kirst kind of fall in terms of the best of all time, especially now that he brought home a title?
Yeah, I would say at the very least it throws him in that Mount Rushmore conversation. Certainly. And he's somebody who is just going to become a face for the game. He's going to help to grow the game. It is worth mentioning, over 30,000 fans at that men's title game, and the women actually broke a record as well, and it was the most amount of people to ever attend the women's national title game. So anything that lacrosse can do, I think, to continue to grow this sport is amazing, and I think the way that you do that is by having faces like Kirst, like Charlotte North from a couple years ago on the women's side, who's now an announcer in the game. Those are the kinds of things that you need to see in order for a sport to really kind of take off.
Absolutely. Maybe like Joey Spallina.
Last but not least, worth mentioning, the Syracuse men's lacrosse team.
Yeah.
I know that the season didn't end in the way that people necessarily might have hoped, but that's only one way of looking at it. That's only one perspective. On the other side, you have the fact that maybe people wouldn't have even imagined they would have gone this far. I think you have to look at it, if you're going to take the positive side, to say this. Syracuse men's lacrosse lost on championship weekend. That means that they were back at championship weekend. That hasn't happened in a long time. Additionally, this is Gary Gates' 4th year with the program. Every single year that he's been with the program, the team's gotten better. And mind you, in that year one, their record was something like 4-13. It was bad, really bad. And then they go to, the quarterfinals, I think in year 3, and then they go to championship weekend. Every year they've gotten better. I'm not sure, outside of maybe a title or another championship, I don't know what else you really could have asked for from him in the Syracuse squad.
Yeah, it's certainly a step in the right direction. It's like you said, each year he's built and he's gotten better and he's improved, and getting back to championship weekend was really, I think, the benchmark for this season. If you're not going to take it home and get to a national title, which is obviously always the end goal, get back to championship weekend and be playing on Memorial Day weekend, and they were. So that's really a positive. On the other hand of that coin, I do understand why people are frustrated, right? It's Syracuse men's lacrosse, one of maybe the most storied program in the entire country, and it has certainly been quite the drought since their last national championship in 2009. So I think it's a really positive step for Gary Gate. I think now, inarguably, right, the train is moving in the right direction. 4 years. You get back to championship weekend in your 4th year. I guess the sky's the limit for year 5 and beyond. He is going to return pretty much everyone notable on this team was a junior this year, including Joey Spallina, many, many more offensively. So as long as, the transfer portal usually doesn't get hit as hard in lacrosse, maybe you lose 1 or 2, but for the most part, most everyone is going to be back next year, and they will have the experience. They'll know what it feels like to play on championship weekend. They'll know what it feels like to compete in the ACC tournament, all of that. At the same time, I also think the other side to this is that if you're Gary Gate and his staff, you have to look at a program like Cornell this year and like Maryland this year, and you have to figure out how you're going to eventually get past that mountaintop, right? You have to figure out at one of these days, you're going to have to beat Maryland to get somewhere. And you have not done that in 8 consecutive games against them. So obviously that's what they're going to think about this offseason, and they're going to figure out how to try to get back there. They end the year ranked 4th nationally in the polls. So can't fight that. And like you said, aside from a national title or playing in the national championship game, you couldn't have hoped for much more. I at least was hoping for a more competitive Maryland game. I'm not going to lie. It was a disheartening semifinal game. Maryland goes up like 7-1 to start the game. Like it was a drubbing. They fought back at the end, but it was just too little, too late. They lose 14-8. I was hoping they would be better prepared for that game, especially with Maryland having beaten them once this season in College Park, and they have never had the answer for John Tillman and Maryland in the last 8 times they faced them. I believe it's like the last 10 years. So in order to really get to that mountaintop, if you're Gate and his staff, you're going to have to figure out how to win those games in the big moments. But they had a few big moments this year, including the ACC tournament and whatnot, and making it to championship weekend. So certainly a marked improvement. I'm excited to see where the program goes next year, like I said, because they're going to have the majority of their veterans return as seniors.
Yeah, I think you make so many good points there, because with this season in Syracuse men's lacrosse, it almost feels like every single thing you could look at from a positive lens or a negative lens. It just matters what kind of mood you're in, right? You know, on a positive lens, yes, to your point, Syracuse almost going to get a little bit lucky because CJ Kirst graduating. Cornell's going to be a different team without him. Logan McNaney, for instance, the Maryland goalie, believe he's out of eligibility. He was a grad student this year. That's a massive part of Maryland's program and a big hole they'll have to fill. Syracuse, a lot of people coming back. You have a lot of the same pieces. Okay, great. On the other hand, yes, you are right to say that the game against Maryland was disheartening. But honestly, if I'm Syracuse, I'm not really looking back at that game with any regrets, because truthfully, I don't even think it was a matter of Syracuse getting, out prepared. I actually think that Maryland was the better team by a lot. I don't think Syracuse was as good of a team as Maryland. I think if they play 10 times, Syracuse wins like once.
Yeah.
Maryland was that good. Their defense was that good. And you knew going into that game that Syracuse is averaging maybe something in the realm of 14 goals per game. Maryland was giving up around 7 goals per game. One of those two things was going to win out.
Yeah.
And I think Syracuse scored 8 goals? Maryland won.
Yeah.
Like they did their job. The defense did their job. And that's been kind of a theme the entire year, which goes back to my positive or negative. One theme has been these come from behind wins, cardiac cues, slow start, fast finish. On the one hand, that's great, because if they hadn't won that game against Harvard, which they shouldn't have, by the way, it would have been a completely different feeling to the end of the year.
Absolutely.
And then they went on and won all these other games,
Definitely.
many of which were by 1 goal. On the other hand, you can't do that every game, because against a team like Maryland, everybody knew that was not going to work.
Yeah.
They allowed too few goals for you to get behind by that much and think that against a legitimate brick wall of a human being, you are going to be able to pull off that kind of comeback. It is what it is.
I guess that's my point with the Gate stuff. At some point, you're going to have a strategy, right? Maryland is a technically sound, excellent team every single year. John Tillman figures it out no matter who he has on his roster. They play in the national championship game almost every single year. I think it's been 4 or 5 years in a row on championship weekend. So if you're Gate and his staff, at some point, you have to have an answer for that, or you're not going to get anywhere.
I totally agree. And listen, again, there are so many programs that would be happy with a championship weekend finish. And I think a lot of Syracuse fans are happy with a championship weekend finish, seeing as the last time that happened was 2013. The last time they won the national title was 2009. It's a step in the right direction. But then you look at Syracuse's history, you see that there was a stretch of time where they won something crazy, like over 20 quarterfinal games. They were at championship weekend 1,000,005 times in a row. If that is the standard, same thing with basketball, then you need to live up to it.
Yeah.
That's just what it is.
Yeah, you can recognize it as a significant improvement, but also realize that it is not the standard of old. And also wonder when or if they are going to get back to the standard of old.
It's a good point right there. Well said. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to another edition of the Orange Zone podcast, sponsored by Apex Entertainment. Be sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. It really helps us out when you do. Other than that, we will see you back here next week. Have a great weekend.